Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is the story of who we are. We create these stories about ourselves, and these stories affect our memory of the past. They affect our present, and they affect the future that we're evolving into. So we're going to take a look at this very interesting dynamic about how the present affects the past affects the present, and everything affects the future, and how we can allow the future to affect our present and our past. So there's this crazy interdimensional time loop that we're going to be exploring today. But before we get started, let's just take a minute or two to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, all your molecules, all your electrons, creating a brilliant beam of light and energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale, exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together, vigorously rub your hands together to feel the friction, the temperature, the pressure, the motion, the tickling and tingling when you stop, and allow all those sensations to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables us to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So today, the story of who we are. This conversation comes up out of a pretty deep dive I've been taking into my history, because I have been a collector of memorabilia for most of my existence, I guess, in some way or another. So I actually still have report cards from elementary school. And so I'm preparing to move, and I have these crates of letters and cards and other kinds of memorabilia that I have been saving over the years. And I'm purging quite a lot of it. And it's interesting. Good morning, Rosalind. Welcome. So good to have you joining us this morning. We're talking about the story of who we are and how uh, we rewrite these things over time. So I'm just talking about how I've had all these a collection of um, memory sort of things, letters from people, letters I wrote, um, announcements of things, journaling, all kinds of bits and pieces. And what I'm wanting to talk about today is how we have a story about who we are, and we tend to believe that it's true. And what I've discovered in looking back through so many of these things is that there's a lot of evidence from other people's communications, even from my own communications, to recognize that my memory of myself, my story about who I've been, has been kind of two-dimensional, and that it was missing a lot of important or equally significant nuance to say that my story about my past is not as accurate as I would have believed. So part of the incentive for saving these things, I think, was so that I wouldn't forget who I was. And it's interesting because now at this point in my life, I'm very much looking to not be bound by those memories and those identities, really, to release attachment to those stories. So it's somewhat paradoxical in my experience of going through these crates of memories, because there were certain, what I recalled of my life was a through line of depression, like pretty extreme depression. And I definitely found evidence of that, have found evidence of that. But I've also found evidence of other elements of my history or my personality, as it was, the way that I showed up in the world, that was filled with wonder and curiosity. And these are elements of myself that I'm now nurturing much more wholeheartedly, right? The depression, thankfully, has dissolved quite a lot, and is not a ruling factor. Good morning, Shosha. Welcome. So good to have you here with us this morning. So we're talking about these stories about ourselves. So I had this story that, who I was depressed in the past. And so as we take these stories, we carry them into our present and typically project them into the future. So with this notion, I'm sharing this so that you can maybe look into the situations for yourselves and what your stories are, and how you kind of might be reshaping history to align with the story rather than having a more dimensional perspective on what these stories are. So having the story that who I was depressed, like in a being sense, so much of where I am now becomes a comparison to that. And so with that comparison, there's a part of me that's sort of holding that in place, like defining myself with that story. And what I discovered in, or what I've been discovering in reading through letters and cards and journals and such, is that while there was an intensity and a depression in a lot of places, there was also a playfulness and a curiosity and a thoughtfulness and intelligence that and a commitment to other people and insight and all these things that are part of who I'd like to imagine myself to be now. So what I'm trying to say is that we can flatten ourselves and create a story that is not necessarily positive, that is not necessarily empowering. And then by holding that story, even if it's to contrast where we are in this moment, we're kind of holding that identity, carrying that baggage along with us. And I'm actively involved in this inquiry, and I invite you to just sort of step into this with me. Like, what do we choose to keep? And it's interesting to me to see the things I've chosen to keep. And as I'm weeding through these things, I've had moments of thinking, I could just let it all go. I'm not there yet. Um, but what I can do, and I think what I am in the process of doing, and that we can all do, is to find our history interesting without being attached to it, without being defined by it, to allow ourselves to move beyond it, to find it more a source of curiosity, perhaps, than of definition. And I just want to say that I have had such a profound experience of how unreliable memory can be, because there are people that I have cards or letter that I had cards or letters from that I don't even remember, and they were intimate. They were intimate declarations of love and care, and I don't have memory of some of these people. And others of these people I had kind of jaundiced memories from, and I'm finding incredible sweetness and depth and warmth. It's so fascinating. It is so fascinating. So Rosalind says, are you able to do this at your own pace, or is there a deadline for your move? I am out of the place that I have lived for 24 years by June 1st. So there's a deadline. But I'm doing this process in a ceremonial way that I'm honoring each piece, each person, reading and then releasing those parts of myself too in the process. So I have another couple days of doing this, and then I get to move on to the stuff. But yeah, it's a big deal. Rosalind, thank you for asking. So Shosha says, finally, I felt my story was like it was a fable as I'm evolving into my life, evolving into my time life reality of the present. But it's definitely difficult as I keep returning to the narratives of the past. So you nailed it. What it is that our narratives of the past are shaping us in this moment, and we're still shaping the narratives of our past. So when we have an experience that's reminiscent of something that happened in the past, we're rewriting that past into this moment, projecting it into the future. It's that there is no linearity. That's what I'm discovering, is we interpret time as linear, but it really isn't. It really isn't. All that's here is this moment. And all this stuff is, I'm present to it in this moment. And I'm interpreting it in this moment. However, what I am carrying into this moment from a remembered, reconstructed past is shaping this moment, and I'm shaping the past. And I can be projecting this into the future, or I can be imagining a future that can also be shaping my present. So that might sound like a total jumble, but when we create a vision for ourselves, what we're doing is we're creating a future to step into, and it shapes our present. It shapes the activity. It shapes our call to rise beyond ourselves potentially, or it mires us more deeply into patterns that we are trying to escape. So, for instance, how that might occur is if I say, well, I've always had whatever, I've always had a hard time with X, Y, or Z. Let's say I've always had a hard time with romance. So there's not going to be any romance in the future, or if there is, it's going to be this, that, or the other, for example, right? Or I've always, anything that we go into the always and everything and forever kind of conversation is shaping our reality. And it's amazing to me on so many levels how malleable our reality is. So Shosha says, makes total sense. It's the Mandela effect of our own lives. It is. It is. The Mandela effect is where people have memories of our history that vary with the quote unquote proof that we currently have. I think one is whether it was Jif or Jiffy, peanut butter. I remember Jiffy. It's Jif, and supposedly always has been. But there's a debate about it. It's called the Mandela effect because there are a lot of people who remember that he died in prison, but he didn't. Or who knows? Maybe we're shifting dimensions, and we have recollection of things from different dimensions. Like maybe we carry that memory into new places. It's fascinating to me, I have to say. It's just completely fascinating to me, to be allowing for the new input. Shosha says, mirror, mirror on the wall. It's funny, Shosha. That's how I sometimes help people remember my name, is mirror, mirror on the wall or off the wall. um, so yeah, it's pretty fascinating to see how, like in the therapeutic work I do with folks, we often go back and rewrite history. We rewrite a timeline. Like we'll go and an experience that was particularly traumatic. We'll go and have an intervention. Like if a child is feeling frightened and alone, maybe the adult self can go back and nurture and care for that child that they were, and it creates a different perspective on the experience, and it shifts the experience of it. And I'm noticing that in reading these things, my experience or my memory, my awareness of this past is also being rewritten in a certain way. And at the same time, what I'm really enjoying is that I'm releasing so much of it that there's it's like it's like a snake shedding its skin, you know, the transformation of shedding an old identity in order that we can grow and expand. And as we shed these things, what happens is that we're not bound by those definitions. And as we become unbound, we become more capable of expressing our greater potentials, because that that skin is tight, you know, it's holding us, it's constraining us in so many ways. There may be folks who have whose memories and associations and stories are empowering them, and they don't need to let go of them. They can use them as fuel to bring them forward. That's not so much my experience, although I can go find and have been finding through these memories some empowering stories to be able to use as fuel as well. On some level, I think whatever the story, it's providing some kind of limit. But there's so much available to us in finding our freedom and moving beyond the identification with all these things. And I think that that's probably the process that I'm going through, is respectfully honoring and releasing the attachments, the identifications with so much of this history. And I think there are all kinds of ways that we can do that. And it's interesting because on some level I've been thinking about erasing myself. And I don't mean going into non-existence. I don't mean being invisible. In erasing the self, what I'm talking about is erasing or dissolving the illusions of who we are, you know, to move beyond it, to become unbounded. So maybe it's erasing the outlines to become a greater expression of life, in its expression of the intelligence of life moving through me, not as a bounded identity, but as a pure expression of life and whatever the potential is for this vessel. So it's interesting to me to be playing with the notion that we define ourselves by time or our experience of time. And so we mark time with experience, but it's that marking of time that marking of experience that we then take on as a definition in our bones, you know, in our being. Like And somehow those experiences, while they're an indicator, they might be masking the essence of who we are. You know, we can get clues from the experiences, but the essence of our being is something that is timeless and maybe beyond our words to describe. Whatever that unique vital force is that makes you you, it's not defined by experience. It's not, it is a brilliant light, no matter what your experience. The essence that you are is a brilliant light. And there are all different ways that that light is expressed. And the more we can free ourselves of all the layers that we put upon that light, the more brightly we, in our unique essence, can shine. So maybe adopting that story can allow us to dissolve the layers that then we can allow our light to shine. So that's it for today. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and I go live here each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel. And I invite you to please like, follow, and share Enlightened World Network and me. The links are in the description. And as always, it is really a privilege and a pleasure to have the opportunity to share these musings together on what it is to be human.